Okay, so we talk about Mamang Dai and the lesson that you have to study titled Pinyar the Widow. Now, when you talk about the northeast of India, we know that the seven states, right? Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, and Tripura. These are the seven states of India which comprise the northeast. So when we study about the northeast, or when we read about the northeast, we know that it is a study in diversity, because the northeast, as we know, is an extraordinarily rich and diverse region, both in its natural resources, its beauty, in the people, their rich social and cultural inheritance, in the resonance of complex politics, the border, post-border ethnicities, and so on. So we know that it is definitely a study in diversity. It's a rich study, it's a rich legacy. But we also know that there's a lot of tragedy because in that place, because of the range of violence that the Northeast has suffered and the blood that has been shed in the name of preserving national unity and upholding India's security. So whenever we talk about Northeast literature, we've always understood that the Northeast has been placed outside the purview of studies in Indian culture and history. And it's only very recently that serious attempts have been made by people to study this region in conjunction with the larger narratives of the nation, right? So the main reason is, or the fact, because the fact why this has happened is because a considerable majority of the population is tribal. And that is one of the causes for the interest of the colonial ethnographers and anthropologists in this region. So these ethnographers and these anthropologists who have made a study of the Northeast have recorded the customs, the manners, the languages, the everyday life of people. Right? So they have tried to record it and have tried to give it to us. So we know that out of these seven states, I mean, maybe you have heard that Assam, Tripura and Manipur had some linkages with the Indic culture of South Asia, but the rest of the Northeast had affiliations with the Mongoloid Southeast Asia. So when the British came, what happened is there was this colonial political expediency which led to this entire region being yoked together with India. So the whole, both of these, I mean, these two parts, you know, we talk about the Indic culture and the Mongoloid Southeast culture. Both these were kind of combined together, they were yoked together. And we know that the region is evidently a colonial construction, and the demarcation of borders was also imposed by the British. So this is the historical legacy which has been handed down to independent India. And many times we've understood that the interests of the Indian nation state have been at odds with the reality and aspirations of the people of this region. So many times we read about a history of resistance to both the British as well as the Indian attempts to administer the area. And most of the issues are linked to cultural conflicts, which translate into identity-based political agitations. But we see that nowadays there's a renewed political and academic interest in the region, and that actually holds promise for the generation of a proper perspective to understand the region and its variegated reality. So the historical exclusion is just one part of the larger picture, where apart from freedom fighters, you know, you have creative writers, thinkers, academics, artists, and many others who find no mention beyond the borders of the region in a nationalist discourse. So writings from and about the Northeast tends to focus mainly on these unresolved issues. So most of the literature from this region reflects the experience of change and the response to it. So we see identity, ethnicity, violence, marginalization, and the life lived amidst this volatility are understandably the content of creative and critical writings from this region. So that is a basic background of the Northeast field. Now, for us, the lesson that has been prescribed for you to study is Pinyar the Widow, written by Mamang Dai. Now, Mamang Dai is a poet and a novelist and a freelance reporter from Arunachal Pradesh. Now, she has worked as a correspondent for various dailies like The Telegraph, the Hindustan Times, the Sentinel. She was also the project officer in the Biodiversity Hotspots Conservation Program of the WWF, World Wildlife Fund, right, in Arunachal Pradesh. Dai was conferred the Padma Shri in 2011 for literature and education, and she has also been associated with the Arunachal Pradesh Literary Society, Sahitya and Sangeet Natak Academy, Raja Ram Mohan Roy Library Foundation, and the Northeast Writers Forum in various capacities. But you know, Mamang Dai is principally known as a creative writer and a historian who writes about Arunachal Pradesh. She was once upon a time a civil servant, right? She had cleared the civil services, but she quit that job to devote herself totally to writing. So, you know, she has written books like Arunachal Pradesh, The Hidden Land. It is a documentation of the culture and tradition of a state about which nothing much is known, or not much is known, right? And she's also written another book titled Mountain Harvest, The Food of Arunachal Pradesh. So both these books, you know, they try to give us a picture about the culture and tradition about Arunachal Pradesh, which many people in India do not actually know. Mamang Dai's creative writings include two novels. One is titled The Legends of Pensam, which was published in 2006. And the lesson that you have to study, the Pinyar the Widow, is from The Legends of Pensam. I'll come to that. So she has written The Legends of Pensam, which was published in 2006. The Stupid Cupid in 2009, and she's also written 2 volumes of poetry titled The River Poems, which was published in 2004. Right, and she also has to her credit 2 illustrated books of folk tales for children titled Sky Queen in 2005 and Once Upon a Moon Time, which is also published in 2005. So you know, Mamang Dai, when she speaks about herself, Mamang Dai talks of herself as an Itanagar-based writer. Right, so Itanagar is the capital of Arunachal Pradesh. Now we come to the Legends of Pensam. Right, because the lesson that has been prescribed to you is titled Pinyar the Widow, and it is from this novel, The Legends of Pensam. Now, The Legends of Pensam actually talks about Arunachal Pradesh from the perspective of its aboriginal inhabitants, or the original inhabitants, the tribals, the tribes, right? So there's an author's note in The Legends of Pensam, and she herself writes like this. She says, Arunachal Pradesh is one of the largest states in the country. It is also one of the greenest. It is a homeland of 26 tribes with over 110 subclans, each with a different language or a dialect. So she says, like, part of it is East Himalayan, and the land is crisscrossed by rivers and high mountain ranges running north-south that divide it into 5 river valleys. Now, the mightiest river in Arunachal Pradesh is called the Siang. It is also known as the Sangpo in Tibet, and the Siang Valley stretching towards the Sangpo Gorge, where the river enters India, in the territory of the Adi tribe. Now, this is the tribe who actually populate this book, The Legends of Pensam. She writes about the Adi tribe, right? So there are so many tribes, right? She talks about 26 tribes in Arunachal Pradesh, but the Adi tribe are the main protagonists of this book, The Legends of Pensam. So like the majority of tribes inhabiting the central belt of Arunachal Pradesh, the Adis also practice an animistic faith. You know, they believe in nature and they worship nature. So that this animistic faith is woven around forest ecology, and they coexist with the natural world. So they are animistic. So there are a very few road links in their territory, and travel to the distant villages. Still, you know, even today it is very cumbersome, it's very difficult. There are river crossing, elephant rides, long foot marches through dense forest, over high mountain passes and all that, right? So it is this land that Mamang Dai talks of as an Arunachali. She's from Arunachal Pradesh, so she's an Arunachali and an Adi. So she calls it a land of pristine forests and rich biodiversity, the beauty of which makes you forget your pains and your aches. So the Legends of Pensam is it's an intricate web of stories. You know, there's so many images and about the history of the tribe, which is set in the territory of the Adis, who are nestled in the mountains of Arunachal Pradesh. So the Pensam actually means the in-between place. That's why she says the legends of Pensam. Pensam actually means the in-between place. The Adis who are nestled in the mountains of Arunachal Pradesh. So they're in between. So that's why it's called the Legends of Pensam. That is the background behind this lesson that you're going to study. Now, the Legends of Pensam it's a series of interconnected stories, and she has divided that into 4 sections. And it's titled, the first section is titled A Diary of the World. The second section is titled Song of the Rhapsodist. The third section is titled Daughters of the Village. And the last one is titled A Matter of Time. Yeah. So these are the 4 sections to which the Legends of Pensam, this series of interconnected stories, are divided. Now, when you read this novel, you'll realize that even the title, The Legends of Pensam, A Diary of the World, that is the sections, name of the title, the name of the novel is The Legends of Pensam. The title, even the sections, Diary of the World, Daughters of the Village, Song of the Rhapsodist, then A Matter of Time, all these are in small letters. It is not in capital letters. There are no capital letters because she wants to actually portray that they are different. So that difference from the rest of the world, that is what she's using. That is why she uses this kind of narratology or the narrative technique, the structure is so different because she wants to be. Usually, when we write a novel, we always give the title. At least the first letter of the word would be in capital letters, in caps. But here, it's all in small letters, and the reason is because she wants to show the difference. How the Adi tribe is entirely different from the rest of the country. So it's not just difference; it is something. They have something very unique. There's something very intricate about them. There's something very special about them. So that is what she wants to show when she uses this kind of narrative technology or narrative technique. So there is not a single protagonist. So whenever you read a novel, there'll always be one main hero or a heroine. But in the Legends of Pensam, there is no single protagonist. And the focus is entirely on the Adi community, the entire community. So there are a series of stories. They're different in themselves, but still they are interconnected. So these stories, though disparate, they are connected. So that is what the novel is all about, and that is what makes this novel very unique. Now, what is the primary focus of Mamang Dai when she writes this novel? So she wants to chronicle how the entire way of life changed, of a community changed when it came in contact with the colonial regime in the late 19th and early 20th century. So when the British came, how the way of life of the Adi tribe totally changed. So the stories relate not just to the location called Pensam, that is not the in-between place, but it's also metaphor of the issue of how the Adis are negotiating this change and how they are in an in-between position. Right? So it's not just about this location, but they're always in between, caught between both these worlds. So you have their own culture, they had the British culture, and when the British came, they tried to integrate them with the rest of India. So they are caught in the in-between position. So that is what this novel is basically about, and that is what Mamang Dai is trying to prove to us. So when we read the novel, we see that the Legends of Pensam begin with a prologue. There is a prologue which gives you it frames the narration. So the prologue talks about a group of 6 people, including the narrator, who is flying from Assam to Arunachal Pradesh. And as the helicopter in which they are traveling leaves the plain region, and approaches the hills and mountains of Arunachal Pradesh, the narrator suddenly goes back to her childhood. She has memories of her childhood and the stories that she had heard as a child, which sustain the dreamlike quality of the early years of her life. Now she comes back to the same path of her birth, back to the land of her birth, and she attempts to bridge the disconnect between her past and her present. She brings the stories that nourished her childhood and the realities that sustain her in her adult life. So that is the kind of connection that she is trying to bring. So the Legends of Pensam it begins with a description of the narrator's return to the Gurdum town where she had lived as a child before she moved to the big city. So from there, she has a friend with her, Mona. They're traveling. There are a group of 6 people. So she has Mona with her. They travel together to Duyang. Duyang is called the village of widows, which was also the ancestral village of the narrator's mother. So the homecoming was in a major part occasioned by the fact that Mona, who is a friend, she's a proprietor and editor of a glossy magazine called the Diary of the World. And Mona was always on the lookout for unusual true life stories, and that is the reason why they come to Gurdum and from there to Diya. So Mona is she's a mix of Arab and Greek, and her husband Jules is a famous developmental scientist in he's a French. He's a man. He's from France, so he's a French man. And and they had a very mobile lifestyle, which made them travel across countries and continents. And at that time, they were in Delhi. Now that is how they get connected with this narrator, and they come together and they decide to come to Gurdum town and to Duyang and to read about the Adis and to hear, like true life stories, unusual true life stories. So Mona was the main person who made the narrator come back to her hometown or come back to the city, come back to the town or to the small town where she was born. Now, this story that is prescribed for you, titled Pinya the Widow, it's a tragic tale of Pinya, a woman named Pinya, who fell in love with a man called Orca. Now, Orca was not from the tribe that Pinya belonged to. He was a member of a different clan, right? And against the wishes of Pinya's relatives and family and villagers, she fell madly in love with it. And unfortunately, she became pregnant before she got married to him. And what happened is when she became pregnant with Orca's child, the villagers forced them to get married. But Orca, all of a sudden, he says, "No, I'm not going to get married to her." He acknowledges the paternity of the child. He says, "I'm the father of the child," and but he refuses to get married to Pinya. And he takes this child and he goes back to his own village. So, and then this the story of Pinya. That is, we'll read the story. So I'll kind of describe the story then. So this is the story, right? And this is actually the second story in the first section. The first section titled "A Diary of the World." I told you about the different sections, right? Now we see that in the Legends of Pensam, Mamang Dai has used ancient myths. She has used the rich tribal folklore in a framework of past historical events. And she's also used the contemporary reality to build up a complex document that celebrates both the commonplace and the mystic in nature and life. So that is what this novel is all about. When you read about her description of the surroundings, the relationships, the lives of people, you understand it's very, very lyrical. And you kind of, as a reader, you are drawn into the spirit of the region. So a whole way of life is brought to life. A whole way of the Adi tribe's life is brought alive from the time of its origin through the appearance of the colonizers to the present day. So we see the Adi tribe. This is about the entire novel, The Legends of Pensam, right? So you read about the Adi tribe from the origin, right? And then how the colonizers came, how they tried to kind of join it with the present day, with the present India, and the kind of experiences that the Adi tribe undergo at present. So the concerns, the entire concerns of the Adi tribe are very vividly presented in the Legends of Pensam. I think last semester you had to study about a writer from Nagaland called Temsula O, right? That's also a Northeast writer, and Temsula O, the pot maker, I think. Yeah. So what is Temsula O? Temsula O also makes it very clear that the Legends of Pensam. She's also read the Legends of Pensam, and she says that this is actually a work which is very, very relevant in the contemporary turmoil of change. So according to Temsula O, the cultures of Northeast India definitely are facing a lot of tremendous challenges, from education, from modernization. They have their own, the native culture. they have a lot of challenges because of modernization. So in the evolution of such cultures and the identities that they try to embody, there is always a problem of the loss of distinctive identity, right? And this loss of distinctive identity markers does not bode well for the tribes of the region. So according to Temsula O, if this trend is allowed to continue in an indiscriminate and mindless manner, what will happen is there will be globalization definitely, and there will be a market which will be created where there's where the Naga, the Khasi, the Mizo communities, they are the communities of the Northeast. They will just become brand names and commodity markers stripped of all human significance, and which will definitely mutate the ethnic and the symbolic identities of a people who once lived very close to nature. So what is happening, what she says is, this kind of globalization or this kind of modernization will definitely reduce the identity of these communities, the Northeast communities, maybe the Khasi community or the Mizo community or the Naga community. They have their own identity. They have their own identity. But this kind of, encroachment on their distinctive identity, this kind of encroachment on their traditional ritualistic methodology, by education, by the modern education system, by modernization, will reduce the identity of these people to somebody like, to some anonymity. They'll become anonymous. Their distinctive identity markers will definitely be lost. Their cultural and traditional significance will be lost. So that is what will happen in the days to come if this kind of indiscriminate and mindless globalization is going to happen. So Temsula O has remarked like this after reading the Legends of Pensam. So she says, it is definitely a work which is very relevant, because today we see contemporary turmoil of change. So if we read the Legends of Pensam, we will understand a lot about what the community is about, and the Adi community, how they have undergone change and how they are trying to fit into the present Indian scenario. So that would be just an introduction about this lesson. We will do the lesson tomorrow, and yeah.